to invite you that you see. Welcome, welcome. Well, let me just say welcome, everybody. I haven't been on for a while. And so I would love to hear from you. And what do you see as some of the harm that's been done? If it's not physical abuse, and do you even know that harm has been done? Do you even know that you've been hurt or harmed? And how would you know? So what is some of the harm that's done? And I would love to invite you to share. What do you think some of the harm has been done to you or to someone you know? Maybe it's not you. Maybe you definitely don't want to talk about you online in a social media place, but we would love to hear from you. If you want to just give in some of your comments, maybe it's someone you know, maybe it's a girlfriend, maybe it's your mom, maybe it's your sister. What is some of the harm that you know that's been done? Not a black eye, no physical signs of abuse. What are some of the other signs of abuse that you might notice if you're a small group leader, if you're a pastor's wife? What might be some of the other signs of harm done to someone who might be being abused? Can you tell? Do you know what they are? Do you know what they are in yourself? Do you know what they might be in others? We welcome you to put it in the chat. We would love to hear from you. If we don't hear from you, we'll give you some things, but we want to see what you know. Isolation. Okay, you're right, Gail. That's a really important thing, that sometimes we're being isolated because our abuser tells us they don't want us to visit our family anymore. They may use spiritual reasons like, hey, God calls you to leave and cleave. I don't want you to call your mom anymore. You're supposed to depend on me, not on her. And they begin to alienate you from other people. Or it might be that you isolate yourself because you're embarrassed, you're afraid, you don't have any money or resources to go anyplace, you're not allowed to drive the car, you don't have any funds to go anywhere. And so you begin to isolate yourself. But isolation damages you, right? Because it cuts you off from community. And if the only news that you read or the only information you get is from one source, like if all you listen to is Fox News, or if all you listen to is CNN, if that's the only channel you listen to, it shapes your thinking, doesn't it? Absolutely. It shapes your thinking because that's the only information you're getting. So isolation is very toxic. That's why cults use it. That's why dictators use it. They don't allow news into the country. You think the dictator of North Korea allows Western news or Western media to get in there? No. So you control people when you isolate them. So that is one of the key signs of damage. What else?
We've got low self-esteem.
Yeah, low self-esteem. Insecurity, lack of confidence. Yeah, Suzanne on Instagram says, my ex said what happens behind closed doors is okay in God's eyes. Now, your ex may say that, but do you believe that's true? This is really important because one of the things, at least we see in our organization, the harm done, is that you stop thinking for yourself. You stop having your own thoughts because you're put down so much. You think, oh, what I think isn't right. What he thinks is right.
Or you just stop trying to speak because you're never heard.
Yeah. Yeah. Tamara says, I'm always apologizing. Depression. Depression is one of the harm done. In fact, I'll just share a story. And Diane, I think you know this story, but I was a counselor for many, many years in Pennsylvania, and I was working with a lot of women, and they were depressed. And so I was writing a book on depression. And so as I was interviewing women, wherever I spoke, I would interview the women there about depression. And one of the things that really shocked me as I was interviewing women and also in my clinical practice is that I would say 98% of the women that came to me that were clinically depressed were also in an emotionally destructive marriage. And so, depression can be a result of interpersonal turmoil and oppression. When you are captured and you're captive and you don't have a voice and you don't have a choice, you start to get smaller and smaller and withdraw into yourself. And depression is often the result. You just have to numb out in order to function and cope. And sometimes you get so depressed you can't function and cope anymore. And so I began to scratch my head and say, wow, is what we're offering women for depression the proper treatment? The problem isn't in them. The problem is that's how they've been harmed, but this isn't their problem. This is a problem that they have to deal with in their marriage. And how do they do that? And so this is so important that we think about the harm that's being done to you or to your girlfriend or to your mother or to your sister when you are in a destructive marriage. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Self-doubt, anxiety, headaches, fear to show up or speak up.
Absolutely.
It's really, really important that we look at this because what do we do? So if he's doing something wrong, He's being abusive. He's being oppressive. He's being a drug addict. He's being a sex addict. He's being a deceiver. Whatever he's doing, that's disrupting the relationship and it's harming you. So he's not okay. And now you're not okay.
Absolutely.
Right? He's not okay because of something he's choosing to do, but it's impacting you. People impact us, right? So now what do you do? What do you do? Yeah, Karen says so much harm happening due to living in a destructive marriage. Physical harm, emotional harm, spiritual harm, financial harm, sexual harm, interpersonal harm. You think your kids are being damaged too.
Absolutely.
They're being affected and impacted by the harm. Diana, you were talking earlier about some harm that you noticed as you were thinking about this topic. Share with some of the women what you found.
Oh, one of the things that I was thinking as you were talking was this chronic stress that we're under. Often, especially because it's hidden abuse, we are isolated in it. And it's very hard to describe to somebody what you're talking about. And a lot of times, when you try to describe what's happening, there's no way to really describe the impact to you. But I know one of the most, I think, distressing effects that happens is it changes our brain. We are constantly in survival mode, and it's changing our nervous system as well. So we're secreting a ton of cortisol and adrenaline that affects our ability to put things into long-term memory. It affects our immune system. And often we don't recognize that it's happening because we are over functioning, and our left brain can override our body to a long degree. And your body's telling you the signs, but it doesn't impact you all at once. And decades of living under hidden abuse has a long-term impact on your brain, your body, and your immune system. Not that it can't recover, but we don't want to stay in that.
I think that's such a good point. And so who's responsible for stewarding your body? You are. And so what do we do? And Karen in Instagram says, I see my boys responding in the same way he does, and it's breaking my heart. Yeah, so then what do? We see ourselves being harmed. Our body is being harmed. Our mind is being harmed. The cortisol is off the charts. We're gaining weight. We're reactive. And so then we look like the abusive one because we're so reactive to things. We're so scatterbrained, we can't remember things. So we're the one who's being called stupid and things like that because we can't think because of our autonomic nervous system being dysregulated. Our kids are being impacted. And so what is a Christian woman to do when he's not okay and I'm not okay? His sin is impacting. The Bible tells us people's sin impacts us. Reckless words pierce like a sword. If your husband went around all day stabbing you and your kids with a sword, what would you do? What would you do? Would you just continue to think, oh, well, God hates divorce, so I'm going to let him do this? Or would you do something different? But what about if he's using his words as a sword? Now what? What do you do? What do you do? Are there supplements for cortisol management? Well, that's an interesting question because it's sort of like saying, I have a broken leg. So are there pain meds for that? Yes, there are pain meds for that. But isn't it important for you to fix your leg? Like, we don't want to just medicate the problem. That's where, when I was writing my book on depression, I'm like, wait a minute, just medicating them with antidepressants isn't the solution. That might make them more able to function. And so if you have a broken leg and you got to go somewhere and you got to get out of there, if you can get it out of pain by pain meds, great, do it. But that's not a long-term solution to a broken leg any more than antidepressants are to a broken toxic marriage. It might get you through a bad season for you to make better decisions for yourself, but it's not a long-term solution.
I honestly don't know of any supplements for adrenal issues. I think you will need supplements because you're going to be vitamin and mineral deficient because your body is using everything it has and it needs more. You're taxing it. But as you said, Leslie, there's only one solution for what's happening to your body, and that's protecting yourself and doing whatever you can to build up your resources.
Yeah. And that is really hard for Christian women. And I'm going to be doing a workshop next Thursday, August 15th, on this very topic. And it's going to be called, on the bottom, you'll see that I'm okay. I'm not okay when you're not okay. So that's what we were just talking about. You're not okay. You being abusive, you're being sinfully, unrepentant, sinfully, repetitively sinful in destructive ways in our home toward yourself, toward me, toward our kids. And I'm not okay. We're not okay. Our marriage isn't okay. What do we do about that as Christians? What do we do as Christian women? And so I'm going to take that topic, the very thing that we're talking about right now, the harm that's being done to you because of someone else's sin that you're tied to in a legal arrangement, in a spiritual arrangement of marriage. What do you do with that? And so one of the things that we typically do is we try to fix him. Like if he stops being abusive, if he stops cheating, if he stops lying, if he stops watching porn, if he stops doing what he's doing, we'll be okay. And how's that working? How's that working? If you can stop someone from doing something harmful, great. But what if it can't? What if it doesn't change? Then Diana said, what do you do about your problem? And can you define your problem? His problem is he's an addict, or his problem is he cheats, or his problem is he's abusive with his words. Your problem is you're getting depressed, you're getting dysregulated, you're getting reactive, you're getting depleted, your body's breaking down.
Right.
Who takes care of your problem? And what's the fear of taking care of your problem? What do we do? What do we do? And this is what we're going to talk about at the workshop. So I would really encourage you to sign up, because we're going to take this workshop off of social media so you can attend privately. It's not on social media. If you would like to sign up for this workshop, we're offering a time at noon, and we're offering a time at 7:30 p.m. Eastern time. Noon Eastern time, I'll be live both times. Afterwards, we will invite two of our coaches to answer questions as well as me. So a coach and myself will answer questions both in the daytime and the evening, all of your questions about this, because I think this is a huge, huge problem in the Christian community, especially because we are so taught to be loyal, long-suffering, sacrificial, willing to suffer, go the extra mile, turn the other cheek, bear with someone's sin for a long, long time, until we are so plumb worn out and so ill we can't.
Yeah.
And then we start to break down emotionally, physically. And then what? And then we can't take care of ourselves because we're too depleted. We can't leave because we haven't prepared for that. And so we're stuck in a terrible place.
Leslie, I'm really looking forward to that workshop, because I think oftentimes we don't really know that we're stuck. And you're going to offer lots of solutions and really some validation on what is not okay and what you can work with and what you can't and what you cannot affect.
And if you're a Christian woman, this is, I think, really important, because if you're not a Christian woman and you don't have those values, you probably would just leave. You would just say, hey, I'm out of here. But for a Christian woman, that's not such an easy solution, because of our values of the sanctity of marriage, the teaching that God hates divorce, which, by the way, is not exactly what Malachi says, but we've been taught that's what it says. God hates certain things, but he doesn't hate all divorce. But I'm not promoting divorce, but I am promoting that you take responsibility for the only problem you can work on. And if he isn't responsive to fixing his problem, then you have to work on yours. And you have to begin to identify what that is. You know, Diana, I grew up in an abusive home, and we've talked about this before, you know, in our coaching. And, you know, for a long time after I became a Christian, I tried to solve my mom's problem. Like, my mom was abusive. She was an alcoholic. She was verbally abusive. She was physically abusive. And I tried to, you know, now I'm a social worker. I've got my MSW. I'm a clinical social worker. I've got a degree. I've got a license. I'm doing practice. I know what my mom needs. I know she needs to go to AA. I know she needs to go to therapy. I know what she needs. And you know what? Didn't matter. She wasn't going to do it. She didn't want me to fix her problem because she didn't want to take any ownership of her problem. But her problem made me crazy with pain, with bitterness, with just fury that she wouldn't work on her problem. And so now I've got a problem. And what am I going to do about my problem? And the only person I could work on was me. I could never fix her. And she didn't want to fix her. But her was impacting me. And so it really taught me in a very powerful way that if she was going to continue to impact me, I had to take responsibility for me to work on me. And so I'm going to teach you what that looks like from a Christian perspective. And especially it's different when it's your mom because you're not living with her as an adult. But when you're living with a person who's continually harming you, what do you do?
Mhm.
What do you do? What does God say are your options? How do you steward your, not just your safety, but your one precious life, emotionally, financially, sexually, spiritually?
You know, when I'm working with ladies, Leslie, I like to ask them, what is the cost to you? Because often we're just working so hard to survive and to push forward that we're not paying attention to the cost to our minds, the cost to our thoughts, our relationships. And I know TW is saying in the chat that we don't realize how often we're tense and upset and what our body is carrying, along with the fear, the tension, the anger, the frustration. I've been doing some exercises for my ear. I have seen a physical therapist, and I have learned the hard way where I carry the intensity of my emotions. It's all in my neck and my jaw. And so if we're not working on what we can control and what we can choose, if we're not aware of what's happening to our bodies, it will catch up to us and it will affect our functioning, as it's affecting a little bit of my hearing.
Yeah. You know, the Lord tells us really clearly in the Bible to be stewards of our body. He says to present our bodies a holy sacrifice, not to our husbands to misuse and abuse, but to the
Right.
Lord. And the Holy Spirit lives in your body. So I would love all of you who are listening to us right now, I would like you to put your hand on your heart and put your hand on your belly and ask yourself, Lord, what am I to do to take care of me if I'm being harmed by a relationship, whether it's your adult parent, whether it's your husband, whether it's an adult child who's harming you, if I'm being harmed in a relationship, physical harm, we can see, I need to get out of here. But if I'm being harmed financially, I'm being harmed emotionally, I'm being harmed spiritually by someone who keeps calling me names, Jezebel spirit, you're not being submissive, you're not doing what God, you're going to go to hell. These are spiritually abusive words that so many women live with. Put your hand on your heart and your belly and ask the Holy Spirit who lives inside of you, what is true? What is true? What is it that he wants you to do? And it's often going to be really clear to you, but you're not going to want to do it because it feels really scary. If he says, I want you to take care of you, and it's like, oh my gosh, all of a sudden I have to take care of me, or I have to speak up, or I have to lead. And it's like so scary to do that we sort of know, but we don't want to know. You know, like all of us know we should eat healthier, right? We all know that. We all know that we need to exercise. We all know that. And yet, oh, it's hard to change our ways. It's hard to be the big girl and be responsible and do what we need to do. But yet God calls us to that maturity. He calls us to that growth. If you were being harmed by a stranger, would you let it continue to happen? No. So what are some of the spiritual things that get you stuck here? What are some of the spiritual lessons that get you stuck here?
That's a great question.
I would love, what's one of the, it's, yeah, TW says it's scary. It is scary to make changes, to rock the boat. What are some of the spiritual, maybe teachings like God hates divorce, therefore you have to figure out, make it work no matter what. Maybe that's one. What is some of the spiritual? Yeah, I'm just so exhausted. I don't have the energy to get it done, to do
There
what I
you
need
go.
to do.
That is a truth, Leslie. Often you've been in abuse for a long time and you're physically and emotionally exhausted and don't know that you have the strength to really protect yourself or do what's necessary.
Mhm. I'm going to say something I've not said publicly before because God just brought it to my mind. So I've never said this before, but I'm just going to put it out there and I might get some kickback, but I think it might be kind of true. Like God calls us to love, right? So what might be possible if you loved your husband, even if he's abusive, but you didn't love your marriage? Like, I think sometimes women love their marriage. Not they love the marriage they have, they love the idea of marriage. Like someone put in the chat, what keeps me stuck is the scarlet D. Like, oh my gosh, I love the idea of marriage. And if I get the scarlet D, if I get divorced, I'm a failure, right? That
Right.
so we're so committed to marriage, it's almost become idolatrous in some ways. That it's allowing us to continue to be harmed and stuck and immature and scared and depleted. Is that God's will for you? Now, I'm not advocating divorce, but I am advocating good self-care. And that might mean saying no more to being treated this way. And that might make your husband take stock of his life. It might not. But do you think God is asking you not to take care of you and to be a sacrificial lamb to keep him enabled to continue to sin and cause harm to you and your kids? Is that true and good and right?
Is that love?
Is that love? Yeah. If you
Right.
really loved your husband. So if you, let's put it in the, if you're a parent of an adult child, if your adult child came to you and said, Mom, I'm going through withdrawal and I need drugs and I need money. I need you to give me some money for drugs. Would you give it to him and think that's going to be helpful?
Yeah.
No, you wouldn't. But he would be mad at you. He would be mad at you, right? But you know that that wouldn't be good. But yet sometimes we sacrifice ourselves. We give our resources of time and energy and money and our body to someone who is just being enabled to continue to be reckless and careless and irresponsible and harmful to us. Yeah. Teresa said, I prayed for years for God to help me love my husband. I learned to love him despite how he treated me. But I did leave after 15 years. I do love him, but I do not want to be abused. And I think that's both and. I do love you. And I felt like that with my mom at times. I do. Sometimes I felt like I hated her. But, I do love you, but I'm not going to let myself be abused anymore. It isn't just good, not good for me. It's not good for you. It's not good for you. That's what love does. It doesn't enable someone's bad qualities to continue to flourish, whether they're your child or your husband or your elderly parent. We say no to ungodliness. We say no to ungodliness, the Bible says. And whether it's ungodliness to ourselves or ungodliness to other people who are doing it to us, we can't make them say no for themselves, but we can say no more for us. I'm not going to allow myself to be sexually abused anymore. I'm not going to allow myself to be lied to or cheated on or gaslit or manipulated anymore. I'm going to take care of me.
Yeah. That statement, I'm going to take care of me, is something that we don't give ourselves permission for. It's okay to take care of my own needs, whether that's physical, spiritual, emotional, your need for safety, your need for resilience, right? It's okay. It's godly. It's biblical to care for your needs.
That's the best question, Laura says. Can you love your husband ahead of loving your marriage? Right. So when Jesus, this is a really good example. When Jesus met with the rich young ruler, remember that story in Luke? The rich young ruler says, hey, I want a relationship with God. What do I need to do? And Jesus says, well, you need to keep the commandments. And the rich young ruler said, I did all that. And he said, well, this is what you really need to do. Give up your money and come and follow me. And he said, I don't want to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And Jesus looked at him, he loved him, and let him go. Like he didn't force him into relationship. And yet sometimes we're so busy trying to fix his problem, forcing him to be the husband we want him to be, or guilt tripping him, or nagging him, or begging him, or pleading with him, and trying to change him. What if we just let him be who he wants to be? That's what Jesus did with this rich young ruler. He let him be who he wanted to be. And he loved him, but he didn't have a relationship with him.
Yeah.
What might be possible if you were strong enough to be able to do that? Because I'm going to teach you how to do that at this workshop. So if this idea is intriguing to you and you'd like to know the how do I do that? How do I get that kind of strength to be able to do that? Then I really encourage you to show up at this workshop live, because you're going to get a workbook. You're going to get an hour of teaching about how to do that in a very concise way, all in alignment with your biblical values. Because it's really important for Christian women to do it right, to do it in a way that honors God and honors themselves and loves even their enemy, right? God calls us to love even our enemy, and your husband may feel like your enemy right now. And what happens is sometimes we get so worn out and so frustrated and angry, we start just setting boundaries out of anger and retaliation. And then we confuse our children because we start to look like the very thing that we hated. And that's a lose-lose for your kids. Your kids need one healthy parent. If you're not it, who is it? So we want to invite you to ask some questions about what we're talking about. Whether it's questions about the workshop, if you haven't signed up yet and you're having trouble, contact assistant@lesliebernick.com. But we would love to answer your questions. So I'm going to just check on our thing and see if there are any.
I want to speak to this last comment that Jenny put out here. And she's saying, I honestly believe he'd be so much happier without me, because he told me that he only married me. He said, because he said he would marry me and for my benefit. I'm crushed and humiliated. And I think one thing I've learned from being and working with you, Leslie, is don't take that personal. That's not an indication of who you are or your value or your worth. Take it as informational. What he says. Put up that shield and that barrier and just learn. Accept the reality and the truth of what he does do.
Yeah. So someone on Instagram asked, how do I sign up? And so let me tell you, it's lesliebernick.com/join webinar. lesliebernick.com/join webinar. Okay. And then you can join the webinar. It's next Thursday. So a week from this Thursday, it'll be 2 times live. It'll be at noon Eastern time. And that's US time. Somebody asked in Facebook, what's Australia time? I don't know. You'll have to go ask Google. But it's noon Eastern time, and it's 7:30 p.m., just like now, Eastern time, not next Thursday, but a week from Thursday, the 15th. And I will be on live. You will have a workbook to follow. You will have slides, PowerPoint. It will be very thorough in helping you biblically understand what's my problem, what's his problem, and if I'm being harmed, what do I need to do about my problem so I can begin to get healthier and stronger, so that I can hopefully invite him to look at his problem. But if not, I'm not continuing to allow his problem to create harm in me and in my children. And this is really crucial, ladies. You know, if you don't begin to get healthy yourself. So when my mom was so unhealthy, what I didn't know is that my dad, who my mom left my dad was working on himself. He recommitted his life to the Lord. He ended up remarrying a wonderful woman. He went to court and fought, and long time ago, when courts never gave custody to fathers. And my dad fought in court for custody of us. He got custody of us when I was in high school. And I just had the privilege of being with him for a week. He's 94 years old now. Godly man, changed the trajectory of my life. Had I stayed with my mother, I would have not had the life or ministry that I have right now. And so you don't know, divorce isn't always the worst thing. As my dad got away from my mom and began to get healthier himself, he began to be the godly man that could influence his children to be godly children. And he's got 3 children, 6 children, because he remarried and married a woman who had 3 children, 6 of us. And we're all walking with the Lord. I don't think that would have happened had divorce not happened. And so sometimes divorce isn't the worst thing. It can be the step for the best thing, because kids begin to get some fresh air of what healthy looks like, what healthy sounds like, what godly really is. And so I'm not advocating for divorce, but I don't want you to be so afraid of it. God doesn't hate divorce. He hates the things that cause divorce. And one of them is the way a husband treats his wife treacherously. That's what Malachi says. I hate when you treat your wife like an object and you throw her away and pick a younger woman as an object. That's wrong. That's not God's plan for marriage. That's what he hates. And so don't be afraid to begin to start stewarding you. That's what adults do. They steward themselves. And as you get stronger and healthier, that will help you make the best decision about the outcome of your marriage. So we highly encourage you. Let's answer some questions.
Okay.
Can the abuse come out after 30 years of marriage? I didn't see it. What do you think, Diana?
Well, I think what the question is, has it been concealed for 30 years and now all of a sudden is it out? I think that happens to many of the women that we work with, Leslie. They'll grab a copy of your book and then all of a sudden their eyes are open. The scales are gone. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. And yes, it can. It can be hidden. You can be duped for decades. Going along in survival mode, shut down, numbed out. Absolutely, it can.
And let me just give it from a different perspective. So when there's deceit for 30 years, oftentimes a woman will finally find out, oh my gosh, he's been cheating on me all these years, or he's had porn addiction all these years. And so all the deceit, like you never saw it because he was good at being a liar. And there are really good liars. But there are times when someone has a brain injury, or they're having a disease in their brain, or a chemical imbalance or something, where all of a sudden they never were abusive in their behaviors before, but now they are. And this is time for you to really call the doctor and get a full medical evaluation. I worked with a woman whose husband stabbed her in the middle of the night out of paranoia, and he had never been abusive before that. And so there was no deceit. There was no history of duplicity or any of those kind of things. There's just this violent incident, never before. And it was a medication error that just made him nuts inside. And so I think it's really important if it's never happened before. And so one of the things we look for when we're looking at abuse is we're not just looking at an incident. We're looking at the patterns, patterns of deceit, patterns of control over, patterns of dismissing and devaluing your opinion, devaluing your personhood, devaluing your physical or emotional safety. So what are the patterns after 30 years? Once you see some of a big, ugly incident, you might see there's been lots of patterns all this time. I just made excuses. Oh, he was tired, or he was busy, or, I just need to forgive. And so your eyes are open because now you see the patterns here. But if it's a one-time incident after 30 years of wonderful marriage, then it might be a whole completely different reason that you should look into. I've been in a 56-year destructive relationship, married for 51 years. I know what I need to do, but I don't find the courage to do it. I'm discouraged with myself. How do I move forward? I actually have the support of my spiritual leaders. Any thoughts, Diana?
Well, I do have a thought. It's one step at a time. And you're definitely going to want to come to Leslie's webinar for some hints on how to really engage in those steps moving forward. But really, it's sitting down, developing a strategy, coming up with a plan, sitting among other people helpers, just getting your team of people to help you know what the next steps are. There are many things to consider if you're wanting to step out of your marriage. But you do need a team, and you need a community of people to surround you and to support you.
Mm-hmm. And I think, to be perfectly honest, you're not alone. There are many women who are right in your shoes. And one of the things that coming to this workshop will help you is you'll meet other women online in the chat, because it's a private space. You feel a little bit more courageous to talk about it, that, wow, I'm not a nuts. I'm not a baby. I'm not, but I have my own fears and I have my own unhealthiness. So it might be helpful to ask yourself, what am I most afraid of? What am I most afraid of? And it might be living alone. I've never lived alone. I went from high school to my husband's house. I've lived there the whole time. I've never had to work. I've never, employed. I've never had to get a job to support so there might be some very real fears that you've never had to really manage on your own. But God is calling you now to rise up, to grow up, and to learn these things, but you don't have to learn them all at once, and you don't have to learn them all alone. There are many women, especially your age, my age, that we just didn't learn those things. It wasn't emphasized to us. You need a career. You need to make sure you get a job. It was like, no, your job is to learn to be a great wife and mom and be a homeschool mom and, tend those fires. And that was the message that we got. And so we missed a little bit of adulting. We might be really good at certain things and really weak at other things, and it scares us. I live in a retirement community of lots of women who've never had to balance a checkbook, never had to open a computer, all of the kind of things that they had to learn to do if their husband drops over dead. Not divorce, but it just all of a sudden happens. And so I think this is an opportunity for you to grow in ways that you didn't have an opportunity to grow in before. And you can be scared of that and let the boogeyman of fear keep you paralyzed, or you can just own that. I'm scared. I've never done this before. It feels really new. It feels really hard. It feels really scary. And surround yourself with women around you who have gotten a few steps ahead of you, who can reach back and pull you forward a few steps, and take those steps one at a time. And in a year's time, if you take one step a day, 2 steps a day, in a year's time, you will make progress. Don't put that burden on you that you've got to do it all in a week. You're not going to do it all in a week. It's okay.
Yeah.
My husband has been unfaithful, and while he's receiving help from a therapist and our pastor, I find myself struggling to let my guard down and trust the process of healing. Despite his efforts, I am still grappling with feelings of hurt and mistrust. I want to ensure that I'm taking the necessary steps to maintain my well-being during this challenging time. Could you please provide me with suggestions or strategies that might help me cope better and support my emotional health?
Mm. Are you waiting for me?
Tell that first, Diane, or you want me to?
I want you to.
Okay. I think that this is such a good question, and I love that you're asking it. And let me tell you why. Because so often when he's receiving help from a therapist and your pastor, oftentimes you're put in the role of the forgiving, supportive helper. And your needs to heal, to deal with your own betrayal trauma and all of that is kind of put on the back burner. And you're, again, trying to fix his problem. Mm-hmm. So I would just say to you, you are right at the verge of the right step. So he's working on his problem. I've been a cheater. I've been a liar. I've harmed my wife. That's his problem. You're in intensive care with the harm that he's caused. And so what is it that you need? How do you need to tend your broken heart, your anger, your inability to trust him right now without any shame or guilt? He's caused damage. It's like someone blew up your house and you're sitting in the rubble and your house has to be rebuilt. Don't feel guilty that you're kind of mad about that. You're kind of mad that he was reckless with your marital house and now it's blown to bits and you're like, I don't even have a clue on how to rebuild this marriage, right? That's okay. You can't rebuild this marriage yet. That's not the first step. The first step is he has to rebuild his integrity, because you can't rebuild a marriage with someone you don't trust. And so right now, your job is to be exceedingly and courageously focused on your healing, so that if he does his work and you do yours, then maybe you can start rebuilding the trust. But if he does his work and you don't do yours, you're going to be stuck with a lot of unfinished business of anger, bitterness, mistrust, resentment, all of that. And so you want to deal with your part of the street and work on your feelings and your pain and your hurt, and get someone to help you, or join a support group, a betrayal trauma, all of those kind of things to help you work on your hurt. Get a coach to help you do that. And then watch Watch and wait to see what he does, because what you want to see is a genuine sense of repentance of how he not only embarrassed himself or hurt the marriage, but how he disappointed God, and he wasn't the man he wants to be. It's not just about trying to win you back so you don't leave. It's about, did he do his work to say, hey, I am not, when I'm cheating and lying, that's not the man I want to be before the Lord, before my children, before you as my wife. And I need to work on that. And for you to do, what's the woman you want to be? Not just the supportive wife, but the person, the woman that God's called you to be. Strong, courageous, brave, whole, healthy. How do you get there right now is your work. Anna, what would you like to add? Anything, if anything?
Well, I think what I would add to that is it's a process, and you know, you're going to watch for his heart to demonstrate the things that Leslie had mentioned, and you're going to want to watch for that consistently across time. It's often easy for someone to show initial signs of remorse and regret, and want things to kind of return to normal pretty quickly. But what you want to see is, can he demonstrate a true character change across time? Is this who he's going to be now? Is he different? And has he demonstrated really awareness of what led to him making those choices?
And if he blames you in any way, that's a big red flag. It's a big red flag. Right. So it's really important that we own our stuff. So even if you weren't willing or able to have sex with him for 6 months because of medical issues or your own fears or other things that are going on in you, and he says, well, that's why. That's not why. Because lots of people do not have the sex life they want in their marriage, and they don't cheat. They don't lie. And so he might have been disappointed. He might have said, hey, this isn't working for me, and we need to get help for our sexual dysfunction. All of those things he could have done. And so it's not about you that he acts the way he acts any more than it's about him, the way we act, right? So we have to go both ways. And so you're going to learn that in the workshop. You're going to learn how to let him take responsibility for him and how to have you take responsibility for you. Right. And this is huge because we spend a lot of time in marriage and other relationships playing the blame game. If only you would do this, I'd be fine. Right. So you need to act a certain way in order for me to be okay. We do this with our kids. You need to you need to behave in order for me to function as a good mom. And if you don't behave, I'm going to be a wild woman. Right. That's ludicrous. It's not true. But we sort of do this blame game in our relationships all the time. And so if you are in that space, please sign up for the workshop because you're going to learn how to get out of that space and be a healthier person. For those of you on Instagram, you can sign up by going to leslievernick.com/join webinar. And if you can't attend live, I highly encourage you to attend live. There's some bonuses if you attend live, and there's a Q&A. But if you can't, you will get a replay if you sign up. You will not get a replay if you don't sign up. But you will not get access to the chat feature, nor will you get access to the Q&A time, because we want that to be private for only the people who are live. So if you come live, you're going to get a little bit more perks and a little bit more attention from me and the coach in answering your questions than you will if you just watch the replay. You'll get all the information on the replay, but you won't get the experience. And I think the experience is going to be, if not more valuable than the information. We are on information overload, ladies. We get so much information that we don't apply, that just watching the webinar isn't going to impact you the same as being there and really learning how to do it in a community of other women who can support you, encourage you, and help you through it. So that's that. So here's the next question. My husband has been extremely emotionally, financially, spiritually abusive, utilizing coercive control. It has been very covert, and I hid it from everyone but my closest friends. I separated about 1.5 years ago. I've done everything by the book so far. So thankful for your resources and the wisdom it's provided. I've I am left legally separated, financially strained, stranded in the city without a church home. He kept the church support in a legalistic community. I am without family support because his family believes the version of the story and mine lives far away. We have a special needs son, 50-50 custody, thanks to our state's court leanings. Looking for a new church. Could you give me a script of how to talk to church leadership about my situation without word vomiting? My problem, one of them, is that I'm so traumatized by the spiritual abuse and neglect through the years, by counselors, church leaders, regarding our relationship, that I don't know how to move forward and rebuild my relationship with the church. Really huge problem for women, huge problem for women. More and more pastors are waking up to this problem. More and more pastors are getting educated. I just did a podcast with Chris Moles, which will be on our podcast in the next couple of weeks about this. So Diana, you have any ideas of how she can create a script to interview pastors that might be safe and willing to support her?
I had a client who did this very well. I think a point by point, I would contact the pastor and I would interview the pastor and ask specific questions. I think some of the questions you might ask are, what are your thoughts about a divorced woman fellowshipping in your congregation? What are your beliefs about what the Bible says about divorce and abuse? Leslie, this is probably controversial, but I look for a church where they have women in some leadership positions. She doesn't have to be the pastor. I don't know how I feel about that, but I want a church that there's representation of a woman and they're giving women positions of power. They're not diminished. And then I might ask what the pastor believes in terms of some scriptures on submission and again, women's roles. And for me, Leslie, having a good script is really important, but you also have to feel. I have to tell you, I was at church. This is interesting. I was at church yesterday and I had an experience. And I said, if I have more experiences like that, I won't attend here. There was a male usher and they were praying and he saw me go to walk in and I was just peeking to see where my friend was. Wasn't going to walk in while they were praying, but he took me by the shoulder and pulled me back and shifted his body around me. And he saw the look on my face and he said, you need to wait. And I responded by saying, I am waiting. But more than I could describe to you, and we're talking about this hidden abuse, more than I could describe to you verbally, I felt it. This was not a safe person that I wanted to interact with. I don't know the man. I'm not going to speculate any further, but that experience told me something. And I want to tell our audience, listen to yourself and trust yourself. Don't gaslight yourself and say, oh, well, maybe it's this, maybe I'm too sensitive. No. And I talked it over with my friend and afterward, and she gave me all the validation and she goes, oh no, she goes, they should be teaching people not to touch women. It was so uncomfortable for me and unsafe in some ways. So I would tell you, have a script and then listen and listen to your gut impression of whether or not this is a place where you will be welcomed, where you will be understood, and where you as a female have an equal foot at the table, or an equal seat at the table.
I love that. And I just want to empower you as women. You have no obligation, whether you're interviewing a pastor or you're interviewing a counselor or a coach, to share anything about your personal story until you feel safe enough with the interaction that you received by the first questions. So we don't take all of our clothes off in front of everybody, right? I don't sit here at a Facebook Live without all my clothes. I sit here, in honesty and authenticity as much as I want to be honest and authentic in terms of genuineness. I have my makeup on, so I didn't come here like I first woke up in the morning, but I'm not naked. And I think sometimes we feel like we need to tell everybody our whole story and get totally naked before we know someone's trustworthy. And so when you're talking to a counselor or you're talking to a pastor and you're asking them, hey, what's your training? What's your thoughts? How do you see these passages? How do you treat women who get divorced? Where's the role of women in the church? You're not sharing anything about yourself. But what you are learning is, am I allowed to ask questions? Are you willing to listen to me? Are you willing to answer me? Do you have time for me? Am I important enough for you to value answering my questions, right? If you get bad vibes on just that basic, do not go one step further. because this is not the right place for you, right? So if you get bad vibes that I don't have time for you, you're a bother, you're asking too many questions, you're just a woman, why do you need to know all this stuff? Run. This isn't the church for you. And you don't have to share, I just got divorced and will you be supportive of me? That's not where you want to go, because you don't want to put yourself out there to be harmed anymore. But you can and should ask appropriate questions on who they are, what they think, what they believe. And if they don't have time for you to answer those questions, this isn't the right church for you or the right therapist.
Strong words, good words.
Yeah. All right. Why is it so hard to leave when there is a history of FDV? I'm assuming she's meaning financial domestic violence, but I don't know if that's what you're meaning. So why is it so hard to leave when there's a history of financial domestic violence? FDV. Do you know anything else that might mean?
No, I looked it up. I got something that had to do with your heart. So I don't know.
So we don't know for sure if you mean this, so we're not going to take a lot of time on it, but let me just say this. Golden chains are no less chains than chains of iron. And what I mean by that is sometimes when you're in a wealthy environment where someone controls all the money, but you get the perks, you get the nice house, you get the nice car, you get the status, it is extremely hard to cut those chains. And so I don't know if that's your position, but I have worked with many women who have been married to very wealthy men who are very financially abusive, but they get the perks as long as they comply. But if they resist, there's a lot of financial abuse and there's a lot of threats of extreme poverty and I get nothing. And, that's not true, but you are in for a fight and you have to make sure you get a good attorney to fight for you. But those are some of the things that I've seen in the past, if that's what you're meaning, but we're not quite sure what you're meaning. So we want to make sure that we're not jumping to conclusions on that.
Yeah, and I could just add to that a little bit. I mean, whether you're leaving from a position of wealth and entitlement, which I really think what you said is powerful. It's a chain nonetheless. What is it costing you to be in that relationship, right? And all the ways that we've discussed today. But also, you've probably been conditioned and groomed to believe that you will be destitute. And so if there's financial domestic violence, you've been brainwashed to believe that you don't have worth financially, you won't make it on your own. So those are some of the impediments that will need to be overcome, because you have to believe in your ability to step forward, to get free, to provide for yourself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So before we go, because we only have a few more minutes, we do want to ask you, one of the things that we've been doing in these Facebook Lives, and we believe as an organization, that knowledge is not enough. So you can get lots of knowledge and you'll get lots of knowledge from us and you'll get great information on the workshop. So we highly encourage you to sign up and register. But if you don't use it, then it's just nothing. It's nothing. It's worthless to you. And so we have a lot of knowledge now. You've got information everywhere on Instagram, Facebook Live, YouTube, internet, AI. You can find what you need to find. We're not probably saying anything all that spectacularly new. But what are you going to do with it? And so what I want to ask you before we go is, what is the Lord saying to you is your takeaway from today? What is your takeaway from today? Because this is the application piece. And we're going to talk a lot about this at the workshop, because if you're just hearers of the word, but not doers only, then we deceive ourselves and we're never going to grow. We all know we need to eat healthier. We all know we need to exercise more. We all know that we need to read our Bible every day, but we don't do it. Why? And part of it is because we need a community around us. We need accountability. We need girlfriends who are going to say, did you do this today? I belong to a couple of different accountability groups, and had my friend call me last night and said, are you doing this? And I said, no, I'm going to do it. I promise. And I will do it this week because I promised. And having that support and having that accountability and having those friends who are walking the same journey with you is really important. So let's do that together today. What is your takeaway from today? What is it that you heard that you're going to take into practice? It might be one just small steps forward, but one small step forward can make a big difference. If you take your car and you're driving and you just turn the wheel, you don't turn it like this. You just turn it like this. Your car is going to go in a different direction. So if you take your life story and you just make a tweak here, one shift that you learned today, what would it be? What's your one takeaway? What's your one aha? I'd love to see it. Put it in the chat if you feel comfortable doing that. Yeah, there's so many people who are unhappy and they don't cheat. Yes, there's people who are unhappy in their marriage. And if they're unhappy in their marriage, they can talk to their spouse and say, hey, I'm unhappy. We need to go to counseling. They don't have to cheat. If they cheat, then that's their decision on how they're going to cope with their unhappiness, right?
Mhm.
Jen said, my takeaway is leaving well with dignity was the right decision and stop letting my feelings drive because it leads me to gaslighting myself. Yeah. Yeah, we gaslight ourselves. Well, Diana and I did a workshop on that a little while ago, that we can lie to our own selves. It's not that bad. It's just me. I'm just too sensitive. We can just gaslight ourselves into the fire like the frog in the pot of boiling water, right? And so understand that you're not just being gaslit out there. You can be gaslit right in here by your own self. We deceive ourselves quite naturally, the Bible tells us. Donna says, my takeaway is I can love my husband and still let him go, which I did 1 year ago. Jesus let the rich man go. For those of you who are curious about that, I have a blog on that. Not this week, I think, maybe the last week, but one of the 2 weeks, just if you go to my blog site, on what's the enemy of the best. And sometimes it's our clinging to something that we needed to let go of. And sometimes it's our husband, in order to let them experience their life as they choose to live it. Is there a link to the Gaslighting Yourself workshop? It was a Facebook Live we did a while ago, so it'd probably be on this site somewhere in the history of Facebook's.
It wasn't too long ago. It was, I think we did it for Walking Core Strength, which would have been spring. So look in the spring workshops.
Yeah,
Oh.
I don't think it was for Walking Core Strength, but I think it was for moving beyond people pleasing. So it was in the summer, in June.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Leslie has a better memory than I do.
Yeah, so it was in June. So what's your takeaway? A chain of gold is no different than a chain of iron. Yeah. That's a very famous quote. It's a quote that I like a lot by Francois Fenelon, from a 17th century old guy who I like to read. And he was talking about how we're captured by the love of money and the love of comfort. And it's still a chain and it still binds us. And so when we're in a very comfortable place, whether it's comfortable because we have enough food and house and we're safe and all of that, there's some benefit to that. But if it's a toxic place and we're afraid to rock the boat because of our comfort, we're afraid to speak the truth because of our comfort, then maybe we need to take a look at that, because we're not living authentically as God calls us to live. We're not living our truth. Yeah. So good. Self-love matters. Yeah, I love to talk some more about self-love, because I think we've given it a bad rap and called it selfishness. Self-love is nothing more than good stewardship. The Bible says in Ephesians, no one hates their own body, but they care for it. The Bible tells us that we're to care for our body. We're to guard our heart above all else, for it is the wellspring of life. Take every thought captive to the obedience of Christ. Who does that for you if you don't? Loving yourself means stewarding your one precious life. And if someone is trashing your life or toxifying your spirit by their presence and their abuse toward you, you may not be able to change them, but you can change how you're handling that. And I want to teach you how in our workshop. So please show up next week. We would love to see you there. Now we're going to do a Facebook Live again tomorrow morning at noon Eastern time. And it's going to be called, what's it called? How to Love Him Without Losing You. How to love someone without compromising who you are. Because so many of you are in a marriage where you've lost you in order to love him. You're not allowed to be you in order to love him. We're going to talk about how do you love someone without losing yourself. Jesus did it really well. He was authentically Jesus in every interaction, and he loved deeply. How can you love well without losing yourself in the process? We're going to talk about that tomorrow at noon Eastern time. I hope you show up. Diana, thank you so much. Do you have anything else you want to share?
No, just don't miss the workshop. Thank you for being with us tonight.
Thank you. I'm going to end Instagram because it'll cut me off in a minute. So thank you so much for being here, Instagram. And I'm going to end our Facebook Live here in just a minute. My takeaway is to face the truth, to guard my heart and live unto God. So good. So good. Yeah. Yeah. I'm so glad that you're here. And we hope that you show up tomorrow. How do you love well without losing yourself? I think this is a really important thing, because what happens is when we get so angry that we've lost ourselves, we start to hate someone else so that we can be ourselves. And then that's not ourselves, because we don't even like ourselves when we're full of hatred and anger. So how do we love well and still be true to ourselves and our own values and our own virtues? Tune in tomorrow. We'll talk about that. Diana, thanks so much and have a good evening. All right. God bless. Bye-bye.